They called it the Arena of Laughing Steel. Not because anyone ever left it laughing, but because the steel itself seemed to echo with glee. Every scream, every snapped bone, every spilled drop of blood reverberated off those ancient alloy walls like a cruel joke told over and over. The spectators didn't mind. They came for carnage. And this place delivered. Carved into the side of a drifting slag asteroid, the arena spun slowly in orbit above the war-torn moon of Argent V. It was a forgotten outpost turned pleasure pit, run by the Galactic Mercenary Syndicate and frequented by warlords, raiders, bounty kings, and pleasure slavers. It didn't matter what race you were. Credits talked. Screams sang. Blood danced. And today, the main event was starting late. A lone figure stepped through the gate. Or rather, was shoved. He stumbled as he crossed the threshold onto the blood-stained floor. Old. Slow. He caught himself before he fell, but the damage was done. The crowd roared with laughter. Towering holograms of the old man lit up around the arena, his image blown wide across the rust-colored walls. Civilian-grade rags hung off him like drapes on a corpse. One eye was covered by a black patch. The other, sunken but alert, scanned the arena with quiet calculation. Thousands watched. And thousands laughed. Ladies and vermin, the arena announcer's voice boomed from the spires above. We've got a real treat for you degenerates today. Spotlights ignited, searing down from overhead, pinning the old man in harsh white beams. The cameras zoomed in tight. Every scar on his face, every wrinkle, every speck of blood on the sand beneath his boots, it all became part of the show. Pulled out of a backwater bar on the Rix Prime. No ID. No creds. No weapons. The poor bastard didn't even fight back. The crowd roared again. Someone threw a bottle. It shattered near the old man's feet. He didn't flinch. And so, let's do the poor relic a favor, the announcer continued. Let's send him off with style. 3 more gates opened. And from them emerged the killers. They were beautiful, in the way apex predators often are, graceful, lean, and deadly. All 3 were young, flawless in build and movement. Combat twinks bred in syndicate training vats, enhanced for speed, reflex, and cruelty. Their skin gleamed under the lights, bodies oiled and polished like living statues. They wore only armored flex mesh briefs and weapons, proudly displaying the genetic perfection that came with their profession. The first twink spun twin plasma daggers, their edges pulsing a hungry red. He grinned at the crowd, showing perfect teeth. The second carried a grave scythe longer than he was tall. His eyes glowed amber. His lips curled in a sneer as he dragged the weapon along the sand, leaving deep furrows in the arena floor. The third twink was a brawler, no weapons but a set of pulse fists grafted into his arms. His knuckles sparked with raw energy. He cracked his neck and took a slow step forward. Standard rules apply, the announcer howled. Kill the old man slow. Let the crowd enjoy the show. The crowd cheered, the sound rising to a thunderous pitch as the 3 killers closed in. The old man didn't move. Not when the dagger wielder flicked his blades in a dazzling display. Not when the grave scythe twink raised his weapon and swept it in a mock cleave. Not even when the brawler spat in the dirt and snarled, "You're gonna die screaming, fossil." He just stood there. Breathing. Watching. Waiting. Then he moved. Just one hand, rising to his face. A finger hooked beneath the black eye patch. The camera zoomed in. And the crowd fell utterly silent. The patch came off. There was no eye beneath it. Instead, there was a targeter lens. A dead center, cold blue military implant that shimmered with internal light. It clicked softly, adjusting focus, and activated a thin red ring of light across his pupil. Along his temple, an old mark sparked to life, burned into his skin long ago by military plasma brand. REAPER _engaged. The silence was broken by the announcer's stunned voice, suddenly pitched low, like he'd seen a ghost. Oh, shit. The dagger-wielding twink didn't hesitate. He lunged in fast, the plasma arc slicing down toward the old man's neck. The crowd surged to their feet. And the old man was already gone. He dropped low beneath the first blade, sidestepped the second with less effort than a breath, and came up inside the twink's guard. With a flick of his wrists, the bindings around his arms snapped off, either a trick or something far more deliberate. Twin blades extended from hidden braces under his sleeves. Matte gray. No shine. No flare. But they cut clean. He slashed once. The twink's left arm hit the floor. He slashed again. The right arm joined it. The young killer screamed. His knees buckled. The old man drove one blade up through his gut, twisting slow, then yanked it out sideways, letting the blood paint the dirt. The body dropped. Gasps rippled through the arena. The grave scythe twink came next, furious, fast. He moved like a storm, the scythe shrieking through the air in violent arcs. The old man didn't block. Didn't parry. He ducked the first swing by inches. Slid under the second. And closed the distance. Inside the Twink's reach, the scythe was useless. The old man's blade slipped through armor, through ribs, through organs. Then the second blade stabbed upward into the neck. The scythe Twink choked. Tried to pull away. Reaper twisted his wrist. The boy collapsed in a writhing heap. Blood soaked the sand. The third one, the brawler, hesitated. The camera caught it. The flicker of uncertainty. That moment where the predator realized he might not be the apex. Too late. The old man surged forward, faster than his age should have allowed. He ducked a punch, drove a knee into the Twink's ribs hard enough to crack bone, and followed with a palm strike under the chin. There was a sickening snap. The Twink's jaw dislocated, then shattered. He reeled back, gagging on blood. The old man didn't give him the chance to fall. He stepped behind and slashed across the back of the knees. The boy dropped. A boot to the skull finished it. 3 bodies. Dead silence. Then a scream, one of confusion, not terror. It came from the audience, where someone realized exactly what had just happened. The old man turned slowly. His eye, no, the lens, glowed cold and steady. Cameras zoomed in. The face on every screen was marked now. Not with humiliation. Not with fear. With certainty. The lens flickered. Data streamed through unknown channels. CALLSIGN, REAPER. The silence held for 3 long seconds. Then the crowd erupted, not in laughter, but panic. Some tried to flee. Others screamed, recognizing the name. A few began to chant. One word. One legend. Reaper. And the old man? He stood still. Alive. Unbound. Unmatched. The patch now dangled from his hand like a challenge to the entire galaxy. He wasn't finished. He'd only just begun. The corpses hadn't even cooled. 3 perfect, engineered killers lay broken on the floor of the arena, blood pooling into channels designed to funnel gore for easier cleanup. The crowd was still trying to process what had happened. Moments ago, they had been laughing, screaming for slow death, for a spectacle. Now they watched a myth walk. Reaper didn't gloat. He didn't look to the cameras. He didn't speak. He simply moved. 1 foot in front of the other, slow, steady. The same rhythm he'd used walking through battlefields a lifetime ago. The same rhythm that had followed him out of war and into the grave. Except the grave hadn't held. It had blinked, and Reaper had stepped out. Above, in the VIP towers that lined the arena's upper decks, heads began to turn. A dozen mercenary lords. Smugglers. Gun runners. Killbrokers. All of them had watched the execution for fun. None of them expected the name they'd buried a decade ago to rise from the ash. Can't be him, someone whispered. He's dead. I saw the vids. They showed his body on the black sand of Varrock 9. They showed pieces. Yeah, but that eye. There was no mistaking the lens. Military issue, custom build, restricted to Black Omega units, Earth's most classified hit teams. Each lens encoded to a single soldier. Linked to nerve endings, microfeedback loops, reflex enhancers. And above all, Death Authority. Reaper wasn't just a codename. It was a clearance level. Back in the pit, Reaper moved toward the exit gate. He passed the body of the Twink with the plasma daggers, and for just a second, he paused. His blade flicked out once more. A quick, surgical strike. He took the boy's ear. The crowd flinched. Then he moved on. Security forces were already scrambling inside the arena halls, armor-clad thugs and private muscle hired from half the galaxy. Most had no idea what they were walking into. A few had heard the stories, but believed them outdated, exaggerated, legend. They were wrong. The gate hissed open. A squad of 6 rushed in, plasma rifles raised. They shouted commands. Reaper didn't even blink. He dropped a smoke pellet from his belt, smuggled past the arena scans with stealth coating, and vanished into the fog. Gunfire roared. Screams followed. When the smoke cleared, Reaper stood in the middle of 6 dead bodies, untouched, drenched in blood that wasn't his. One of the rifles was broken in half and jammed into a guard's throat. Another man had his spine bent in the wrong direction. The surveillance drones zoomed in, confirming what the crowd already feared: Reaper was loose. And he was making his way up. High above, General Axton Rowe stared at the feed in silence. He wore full officer regalia, ornate armor designed more for intimidation than practicality. His dark green coat fluttered in the filtered ventilation winds of the tower. His eyes, black, cybernetically enhanced, narrowed as he leaned forward to inspect the footage. "Enhance," he ordered. The AI feed complied. Reaper's face filled the screen. A little older, more grey in the beard, more scars under the eye, but the same man. "You've got to be kidding me," Rowe muttered. "You told me he died," said a voice behind him. A young merc captain, twink-boned, light on his feet, eyeliner perfectly applied, stood fuming. "You said Reaper was vaporized on Varrock 9. He was," Rowe snapped. "I saw the crater. Then who the hell is that? The twink pointed at the screen. Ro didn't answer. Instead, he tapped his comms. Lock down the arena. Full seal. Deploy all remaining elites. I want every corridor guarded, every stairwell mined. No civilian escapes. Nobody leaves until we have his head. What about the audience? The twink asked. Ro sneered. Collateral. Below, the lockdown began. Alarms screamed across the facility. Blast doors slammed shut. Armed drones buzzed to life, forming kill zones in the corridors. Arena lights dimmed as emergency protocols shifted power to the defense grid. None of it mattered, because Reaper was already moving. He ghosted through the corridors like smoke. The lens in his eye lit up with threat markers, infrared overlays, pathing lines. His brain processed them in real time, every movement calculated before it happened. 2 guards rounded a corner. Reaper didn't break stride. He hit the first with a low sweep, crashing him into the wall, then flipped the second into the ceiling and buried a blade in his throat before the first even hit the floor. Gunfire echoed from the western stairwell. Another squad, better trained, armored head to toe in riot gear. Reaper pivoted. Through a plasma spike, one of the brawler twink's pulse core remnants, Reaper posed into a bomb. It struck the wall behind them and detonated in a concussive flash. They were lifted off their feet. Reaper was on them before they landed. A blade pierced a neck seam. Another drove up beneath a helmet. A boot shattered a visor. By the time the smoke cleared, the squad was gone. Blood smeared the walls like art. Reaper stepped over the bodies, silent, watching, hunting. Ro's control room shuddered as the building trembled under assault. The feeds began to fail, camera after camera going dark. Each blink of static meant another hallway cleared. Another checkpoint breached. This is impossible, Ro growled, slamming a fist into the console. There are over 100 men between him and this tower. You think he cares, said the twink captain beside him, now visibly sweating. He's not fighting them, General. He's clearing them. Ro turned, fury in his eyes. Then suit up. The captain blinked. What? You want to command the elites? Prove you belong here? Then take your squad and kill the bastard. The twink hesitated. Just for a second, but Reaper didn't need more than that, because at that moment, 2 decks below, a pair of shadows flickered into the hall outside the north junction. Not Reaper, smaller, faster, deadlier. Reaper didn't come alone. They stepped through the smoke with no announcement. No warning. Just silence, and then death. The first twink, barefoot, silver-haired, twin daggers flashing, moved like a wraith. He darted through the corridor, blades whirling in delicate arcs, leaving only corpses behind. The second was taller, paler, wrapped in a long cloak. He carried no weapon, because he was the weapon. His fingers danced through the air, tapping a sleek implant behind his ear. Drones responded instantly, emerging from his cloak, hovering around him like orbiting moons. They fired with chilling precision, plasma rounds that bent corners, changed velocity mid-flight, struck between armor plates. Together, they annihilated every squad in their path. Reaper's disciples, Ghost Protocol, unofficial, undocumented, forgotten, but alive, and now, they were carving a path of bodies straight to the control tower. Inside the tower, Ro finally understood, this wasn't vengeance. It was extermination. Reaper hadn't come back to prove a point. He wasn't here to make a statement, or claim revenge for some old betrayal. He was here to wipe them out. Ro backed away from the console. Screw this. He tapped a private beacon, coded and encrypted. His personal escape pod activated from the tower's underside. Only Reaper was already there. The escape hatch opened. Ro's eyes widened. Reaper stood inside, 1 foot on the launch deck, one hand casually wiping blood off a stolen blade. The lens in his eye turned red. Ro reached for his sidearm. Reaper moved first. The scream never made it out. And far above, in orbit, a transmission blinked across secure frequencies. The message was simple. Reaper, alive. Operation Cleanse in effect. Phase 2 ready. The tower burned. Smoke poured from the shattered command deck, casting long shadows across the arena dome as the fires reflected off the glass. The crowd inside had fallen to a hushed panic. Nobody dared cheer now. There were no victors. No champions. Just screams, blood, and silence in between. The mercenary generals were gone. Executed. Dismembered. Vaporized. Reaper hadn't left a single one alive. And now, as the black smoke reached the upper stratosphere, it told every satellite, every spy drone, every watcher on every backwater world. Earth's ghosts were walking again. Reaper stood in the smoke and flame like a revenant. His cloak was torn, his armor scarred, but his breathing never changed. Calm. Controlled. Relentless. He knelt beside Ro's corpse, what was left of it, and pulled the general's dog tag from the ruin of his neck. Not for a trophy. For proof. The dead owed debts. Reaper collected. You're not done, are you? Came a voice behind him. The silver-haired twink emerged from the haze, barefoot as ever, his blades already sheathed. No blood on him. He never let it touch him. No, Reaper replied. This was only the payment. For what? He looked up at the shattered tower above, the wreckage of wealth and cruelty. For what comes next? 3 hours later, the arena was on fire and the Reaper's ship was inbound. It wasn't stealthy. Wasn't fast. Wasn't clean. It was old. Brutal. Designed before elegance became the military fashion, back when Earth built vessels not for intimidation or showmanship, but for extinction. It didn't land so much as crash with dignity. The hull slammed against the outer landing field, engines still smoldering from orbital reentry. Reaper stepped aboard like he'd never left. Like 10 years hadn't passed. Like this war had never ended. Because for him, it hadn't. The taller twink was already at the helm, his pale hands flicking across the controls like he was playing a piano only he could hear. We're dark on all scans. No trace signatures. Get us out, Reaper said, strapping into the command chair. Where to? He tapped a slot on the dashboard, sliding in Rose tag. Coordinates blinked to life. The pilot glanced at the numbers. His eyes narrowed. You're serious? Reaper didn't answer. Of course he was. The ship slid into the void, thrusters silent, engines cool. Just one more dead relic in a star system full of lost hopes. But inside, it lived. It breathed. It hunted. And it remembered. Each room still bore scars of old missions. Blaster burns on the walls. A dent where Reaper had once thrown a traitor into the steel bulkhead. Old blood that no one had bothered to clean. Ghosts lingered here. And Reaper welcomed them. He walked to the back of the ship. Past weapons lockers, sealed quarters, forgotten cryopods. Until he reached the war chamber. It wasn't fancy. Just a single table with a projection screen burned into the center, displaying the target, a mining colony, deep in the belt of Vareth 7. Nothing special. Except that it wasn't a mining colony. Not anymore. The projection flickered. Dozens of ships surrounded the asteroid base, mercs, raiders, bounty fleets. All with one thing in common, they'd sworn allegiance to the Crimson Charter. Reaper's old employers. His old betrayers. The Charter had funded Black Omega. Trained Earth's shadow soldiers. Then sold them out when politics shifted. They'd made a deal, Earth's clean image for the Charter's galactic seat at the table. The cost? Every asset burned. Every operative disavowed. And Reaper had been their final hit. Supposedly dead. Supposedly silenced. They'd buried him in the sands of Varrock 9 and called it justice. But they forgot the rule of old ghosts. You don't bury them. You chain them. Or they come back hungry. The pilot twink leaned over the comms console. Intercepted 2 signals from the Vareth system. Looks like they know. Good, Reaper said. The silver-haired dagger boy walked in next, chewing on a ration bar like it was a cigarette. We doing this loud or very loud? Reaper looked at them both. And smiled. The infiltration began at dawn, local time. The asteroid turned slowly, half of it still covered in industrial darkness, the other half glittering with artificial light from the mining rigs. Reaper chose the dark side. Always had. They dropped in fast, no preamble. Ship cloaked, thrusters cut. They landed directly on the hull of the outer ring. Magnetic boots clamped. Hatches hissed open. Reaper led. Always did. They moved through the tunnels like wolves in a nursery. Nothing but soft clanks and whispered breaths. The charter mercs never saw it coming. First outpost, silenced in 20 seconds. Second, 10. Third, Reaper didn't bother with silence. He walked in through the front and broke necks like he was tuning a piano. By the time the fourth was breached, alarms were screaming through the colony. But it didn't matter. Because they weren't here to steal intel. They weren't here to assassinate a target. They were here for the debt. Inside the command core of the colony, Admiral Veslux paced like a man who already knew he was dead. His long red coat trailed behind him, medals clinking on his chest like laughter at a funeral. Impossible, he muttered. He died. We all saw it. Another officer, a young twink with cybernetic eyes and a nervous tick, tapped the screen in front of him. We have video, sir. From Arena Delta. It's confirmed. Lux's lips twisted. Reaper. He turned to the room. I want every gun, every drone, every ship we've got focused on this station. Nobody leaves. Nobody breathes unless I say so. Sir, the officer asked, what if he gets inside? Lux looked him in the eyes. If Reaper gets inside, then we're already dead. He got inside. The walls shook as the first explosive charge went off, blowing a hole in the north corridor. Reaper stepped through with fire behind him. Not a single wasted motion. The dagger twink was beside him, dancing through plasma bolts like he could see time slower than everyone else. He left behind stumps. Screams. A corridor of twitching limbs. The pilot Twink had activated his drone swarm, flooding the enemy comms, turning turrets against their masters. Sparks lit the halls like a ray from hell. Reaper carved his way to the core. They tried to stop him. They failed. The command center burst open in a cloud of smoke and shattered armor. Lux reached for his pistol. Reaper shot him in the hand. Not a kill shot. A message. "You should have paid your debts," Reaper said, stepping over corpses. "You should have let me stay dead." "Mercy," Lux begged. Reaper leveled his gun at the officer's mouth. "I'm not here for mercy." He fired. The back of the officer's skull painted the wall. Lux fell to his knees, trembling. "What do you want?" Reaper tossed something at his feet. A black omega patch, burned, blooded, torn. "You made me a ghost," he said. "Now I'm your apocalypse." And he pulled the trigger. The colony's core was ruptured. Oxygen vented. Fire took the rest. As Reaper's ship rose into orbit once more, the asteroid exploded behind them, an artificial nova lighting the dark. The debt was paid. But vengeance? Vengeance had just begun. The Vareth system was gone. Asteroid dust and debris floated in the black, drifting like ghosts in the silence of space. The Crimson Charter stronghold was ash. No distress signals. No survivors. And in the vacuum's quiet wake, Reaper's ship coasted, cold, slow, silent. They were no longer running. They were stalking. Inside the warship, blood still stained the boots of all three men. The dagger Twink, Kale, sat cross-legged on the deck, sharpening his blade even though it didn't need it. He always said the ritual helped him think. Or stay human. Or at least pretend. The pilot Twink, Ash, stood by the nav screen, his fingers ghosting over star maps, his lips moving silently as he whispered orbital trajectories and kill zones like prayers. And Reaper? Reaper was reading the next name on the list. Admiral Lux had been just one link in the chain. He hadn't ordered the Reaper's assassination. He hadn't sold out Black Omega. He'd just obeyed orders, orders that came from high above the charter. From them. The true architects. Politicians in golden robes. Corporate kings in orbital citadels. The ones who held galactic seats and traded entire wars like poker chips. The ones who'd signed Reaper's death warrant not because he'd failed, but because he'd succeeded too well. Because Earth's old weapons made them afraid. And now, one by one, he'd burn their house down. "Next target's in the slipstream corridor between Tel Van and the Atrix Wastes," Ash said, tapping a system lit with orange hazard runes. "Charter reroutes their high-value convoys through there. Can't track M in real time, too fast, too dirty, but they always stop for jump recalibration at the Bastion Drift Relay." "Bastion Drift," Kale muttered. "Heard about that place. Floating fortress. No laws. No loyalty. Just guns and gold." "Then it's perfect," Reaper said. They entered the slipstream 3 hours later. The corridor wasn't a place. It was a feeling. Imagine fire bending sideways. Imagine stars dragging across the windows like smeared ink. The slipstream wasn't travel, it was violence at the speed of thought. Ash danced the ship through the burn with brutal precision, body swaying with each correction, hair plastered to his face from sweat. This wasn't autopilot work. This was flying like your spine was connected to the hull. "We've got pings," he muttered. "Big ones. Charter cruisers. Escorts. Civilian masks, but they're not hiding well." "Drift relays 10 minutes out," Kale added, now fully armed. 2 blades on his hips. 2 on his thighs. The rest hidden in places nobody ever guessed. Reaper stood between them like a statue carved from regret. "I want prisoners," he said coldly. "Just one." Bastion Drift was a carcass in space. An ancient station that had refused to die, even after 10 wars and 6 pirate takeovers. Ships clung to its surface like parasites. Rusted gantries jutted from it like broken ribs. Its defense systems were half operational, run by AI fragments too deranged to follow protocol. And inside? Chaos. Shouts echoed through steel corridors. Gunfire. Betting tables. Flesh markets. Fighter rings. You could buy a kingdom or sell your brother here, and no one blinked. It was a hell that had forgotten even the idea of redemption. Which is why it didn't even flinch when Reaper's ship landed. Until it opened. The charter convoy had docked 20 minutes earlier. Their officers were already inside, arrogant, armored, and laughing like men who'd never known fear. They traveled with guards, with drones, with kill authority clearance. They were untouchable. Until Reaper walked through the airlock. He didn't sneak. He didn't run. He walked. Like death had made an appointment. A pair of bounty hunters saw him first, recognized the patch on his shoulder, the black one with the blood-red fang. They raised their weapons. Kale killed them before they fired. Blades whispered. Heads dropped. Blood steamed on the deck. "No witnesses," he said softly. Ash hacked the station grid in under a minute. "Charter delegates are on deck 12. Level C, bar called the Hollow King. 2 exits. Full security lockdown. Not for long, Reaper said. The Hollow King was velvet and bone. Red lights. Hanging skulls. Bartenders in mech armor. Patrons who'd slit a throat just to skip the line. Reaper kicked in the main door. All conversation stopped. One of the charter guards stepped forward, mouth already opening with the kind of arrogant protest only powerful men ever uttered. He never got a syllable out. Reaper shot him twice. Once in the throat. Once in the heart. The silence shattered into screams. The room tried to become chaos. Reaper made it order. Kale danced into the crowd, blades a blur. He wasn't killing randomly, just removing obstacles. Removing screams. Eyes. Knees. Ash took the back exit. Dropped smoke bombs. Triggered station panic protocols. Doors slammed shut. Lights cut out. Reaper was alone now. In the flickering dark. With his target. Delegate Cyrus Vaughn, one of the last surviving architects of the betrayal. Still young. Still smirking. Still wearing medals he didn't earn. I know who you are, he said. Good, Reaper growled, grabbing him by the throat and slamming him against the bar. Then you know what happens now. You can't kill me. I'm protected. Reaper didn't blink. Not here. Not anymore. You'll never get them all, Vaughn gasped. There are dozens like me, hundreds, hidden in embassies, citadels, shadow boards. I'm counting on it, Reaper whispered. And then he slammed Vaughn's head into the bar until the screaming stopped. They left before reinforcements arrived. They didn't need to stay. They didn't need to watch. The signal had already been sent, encrypted, targeted, unavoidable. A warning. A declaration. A funeral bell for an empire that thought ghosts couldn't bleed. Ash replayed the audio back as they jumped to warp. It was Reaper's voice. One down. I remember every name. I remember every face. And I'm still alive. The message went to every charter command node in 5 systems. And the response? Silence. The kind before a hurricane. Back in the ship's war room, Kale stitched up a shallow wound on his arm. That was fun, he said. Can we do it again? We will, Reaper answered, staring at the next name on the list. Ash looked over his shoulder. His smile vanished. Are you serious? The name was Counselor Viren Sol. High seat. Untouchable. Surrounded by security fleets. Orbiting a diplomatic moon with United Core Alliance protection. We're not ghosts anymore, Reaper said. We're problems now. Outside the ship, the slipstream churned like a living storm, a glowing blue snarl of quantum force and screaming metal. They plunged back in. No hesitation. No retreat. No mercy. Only blood in the slipstream. The core diplomatic moon was supposed to be untouchable. Fortified by orbital cannons the size of skyscrapers. Guarded by 6 destroyers and a rotating garrison of 10,000 elite core troops. Protected by the United Alliance Treaty, Clause 19, no armed vessel shall enter orbit under threat of conflict or coercion. So when Reaper's ship appeared in its skies, black and unmarked, they thought it was a bluff. Until it didn't stop. Until it didn't ask. For seconds to surface lock, Ash muttered, eyes flicking over the navigation interface. His knuckles were white on the throttle. Auto-defense grid is targeting, Kale said, crouched behind the gun deck. They're cycling missiles. Anti-personnel. They think we're coming in soft. They're wrong, Reaper growled. He stood at the center of the bridge, armored in matte black, patched shoulder exposed like a challenge. The Black Fang insignia stared down the entire moon. The ship screamed through the atmosphere like a spear. Heat shields flared. Sonic booms cracked the clouds. Ash cut engines at 1,000 feet. Dropped them like a hammer. They crashed through the Grand Pavilion's dome like wrath incarnate. Ceremony was in progress. Counselor Viren Sol stood at the center stage, giving a speech to hundreds of core dignitaries. His robe was lined with silver, his hands moving with theatrical grace. The ceiling shattered. The audience screamed. Sol turned just in time to see the warship's hull breach, flames licking the air, and 3 figures descend in its wake like wraiths. Reaper didn't speak. Didn't gesture. Didn't explain. He simply opened fire. The first shot took out the stage guard's knee. The second vaporized a security drone. The third went straight through Sol's left shoulder. The counselor screamed. Collapsed. Blood poured across the ceremonial stones. Kale was already moving, blades out, slicing through panic guards and politicians like wheat. They weren't fighters. They were pawns in suits. Screaming, crying pawns. Ash jammed the broadcast uplink, disabling the moon's call for reinforcements. Reaper walked through the chaos, slow and terrible, like a legend made real. He grabbed Sol by the collar. Hauled him upright. You remember me, he growled. Sol spat blood, trembling. You shouldn't exist. And yet here I am. I ended your unit. No, Reaper said. You just started something worse. They dragged Sol back to the ship. No kill this time. This was different. This one was going to talk. Inside the warship's interrogation chamber, Reaper stared at the man who once signed the death warrant for every soldier in Black Omega. Sol shook beneath the restraints, skin pale, voice trembling. This won't change anything. The charter is eternal. No. It's fragile, Reaper said. Built on lies. On cowards like you. What do you want? Names. Coordinates. Everything. You'll never get out alive. I don't plan to. The data came in bursts. Under the pressure of Kale's precision knife work, Sol sang. Orbital caches. Hidden black sites. Shadow boards. Names buried so deep, only whispers remembered them. Ash traced every feed. Synced every coordinate. This is the entire chain of command. The real architects. Every single one. Reaper stared at the list. 67 names. The last one at the bottom? General Atron Voss, Kale read aloud. Head of Black Omega Protocol Shutdown. The one who ordered the final purge. He's on Pharos Station, Ash added. Deep orbit. Mobile fortress. Full fleet escort. Reaper nodded. This ends there. Pharos Station didn't just float. It loomed. 2 kilometers long. Bristling with railguns and heat lances. It orbited the gas giant Eurex like a predator. Entry without clearance was considered suicide. Which is why Reaper didn't enter. He crashed. The ship came in cloaked under a comm scrambler, using debris from a junk freighter as cover. They breached the station hull at low velocity, just enough to rip through the outer corridor without triggering full lockdown. 3 minutes of total chaos. Then boots on steel. Then blood. Ash took engineering. Overloaded the coolant systems. Started cascade failure timers. Kale went dark. No one saw him. Only bodies left behind told his story. Reaper walked toward the command bridge, straight through the heart of the station, guns blazing. Security mechs fell first. Then the sentries. Then the high guards in their fancy armor and biometric guns. None of it mattered. They weren't trained for a monster from Earth's dead wars. They weren't trained for Reaper. The final door was titanium core, 12 inches thick. Reaper blew it off its hinges. Inside, General Voss stood waiting. Alone. Old, but proud. Decorated. A soldier's soldier. He didn't beg. He saluted. You survived, Voss said. God help us all. Don't pretend to pray now, Reaper answered. You were the best we had. Too good. That's why you were betrayed. No, Reaper said. We were betrayed because we scared you. Voss looked him in the eye. You're right. Reaper pulled the trigger. No monologue. No justice speech. Just the final shot of a long war. The one they thought was buried. The one they couldn't kill. They didn't leave Pharos Station. They blew it. From the inside. Ash stayed at the reactor core, fingers buried in circuits, singing softly as the detonation code ticked down. Kale locked the final security hatches, grinning like a lunatic, high on adrenaline and violence. And Reaper? He walked back to the bridge, sat in the captain's chair, and closed his eyes. Not for peace. Just to remember the ones who didn't make it. Black Omega. Every twink soldier. Every knife fighter. Every mad, beautiful soul who died because Earth scared the stars. The explosion lit the Eurex system for 30 seconds. No one made it out. Not one signal. Not one survivor. Just silence. Later, across the galaxy, stories spread. Of a ship with no name. Of a man with no tombstone. Of a war that never ended, and the twinks who brought it back with a vengeance. They say Reaper's ghost still walks in dead stations, warning traitors in their sleep. They say the patch with the red fang never burns. They say one last transmission echoed from the Pharos blast zone, intercepted by a scavenger crew. 4 words. Mission complete. Black Omega. And then silence.